Today I went into an unfamiliar linguistic site at the River Lot 11 Indigenous Art Park east of the U of A for the abduction phase of my research into Cyberpunk 2077 by CD Projekt Red. Walking around this site was a great experience for me. The sculptures around the park were amazing, and the most important part for me was the text plaques describing the art pieces. I have no experience reading any of the languages present in the park, other than the English translations, so attempting to decipher what was written was completely impossible for me. The closest I was able to come to understanding any text was inferring context from the artworks themselves. Even with that context, I don't think I could have truly understood any of the paragraphs present without the English alongside it. I think the only sculpture that I was able to understand and recognize was the hide scraper, as seen here. I remember seeing one like it that an indigenous friend of mine owned, but even with that background, I couldn't translate any of the text on the plaque. This was a very interesting experience because I felt very out of place trying to decipher the languages around the park. It got me thinking a lot about my research topic of alienation through technology. My current research centers around the critique of alienating oneself from your own humanity through technology in the form of cybernetic enhancements in the game Cyberpunk 2077, and the ironic nature of that critique being present in a video game, a technology with the potential to connect common people and thus reducing alienation. I felt that being in this park, unable to understand any of the text around me, was a very alienating experience, as I wasn't able to properly consume the art pieces before reading any of the translations. I can only imagine how alienated I would feel if the entire world around me used these languages instead of the ones I grew up with. This got me thinking a lot about how difficult life must have been for the indigenous peoples during the colonial era. Being in a system that replaced their languages with complete unknowns would certainly present an enormous challenge to maintain culture and identity without being alienated from society. Through assimilating practices, I would assume that the colonialist powers likely pushed a kind of culture industry, one even more insidious than the ones expressed by Horkheimer and Adorno. In their essay, they describe it where striking unity presents men with a model of their culture, the false identity of the general and the particular. Under monopoly, all mass culture is identical. The European assimilation of indigenous cultures likely led to a very similar effect, where their unity was struck and they were forced into a false identity created by the hand of the oppressive class. This kind of system causes the Marxist idea of false consciousness among lower classes, which further alienates them from society itself, preventing any semblance of resistance against the oppressive system. Assimilation and mass culture are very different systems, but their end goals do relate. I found that this experience provided a very valuable insight into alienation, and I think it will greatly benefit my research into this topic.